Welcome, everybody. Appreciate everyone being with us here today. And my name is Geoff Hiller. I teach accounting here at Triton. And welcome to a little session on a topic that's maybe not the most pleasant of all, but something maybe worth covering anyway, and that's called cheating. I'm going to dispense with the go around the room, introduce ourselves thing, because I know our time is limited to about a half hour, so I thought I would try to get right into it. Yes, I'm glad that everyone is here. Instead of out shoveling, maybe you're putting that off till later. So let's have a little session on this topic called cheating here. Cheating has been around for a long time, at least as far as cheating in the academic world goes. In fact, it's been around for a long time. Yeah, a very long time. I think it's pretty much been going on ever since time itself. But since the caveman days, as the years and the centuries roll by, we have gotten to know some pretty traditional methods of cheating, such as what we see here in the classroom and have seen for years and years. I label these as the traditional types of cheating. Your basic, look at somebody else's paper, look at your arm, look at your hand. And of course, we've also seen the kind that's sitting outside the hall before class starts with one student copying the homework of another student. And that's been going on for a while, and it's been pretty much known that it happens. And strangely enough, it becomes the topic of many movies. It becomes a part of a lot of movie plots. In Back to the Future, Biff was bullying Marty into doing his homework for him. And then there's a line from this movie. And I simply couldn't resist. It's one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies. So cheating is out there, and it always has been, basically. But now we're in the digital age. And so now cheating has become a game changer in terms of how cheating takes place in the digital age. And yes, so the students are home and taking classes online or ERL, and who knows what's going on there. But quite possibly some of these things are going on there at the time. So we've got all sorts of devices and all sorts of things open and all sorts of ways to cheat. Well, let's take a step back and set a little context here in terms of why do some, I'll say some, of our students cheat. It doesn't mean that they are bad people necessarily, but they are essentially humans. And basically humans, that got sort of covered up there, but the path of least resistance, they're looking for some shortcuts. Yeah, why go the long way when you can take a shortcut to success? So sometimes that's the situation. Other times, and this has probably been the number one answer when I confronted a student who admits to cheating, I panicked. I just plain old panicked. It was very stressful, and in a stressful situation, one tends to panic. And then sort of a combination of these things, my former professor of forensic accounting at DePaul, Dr. Kelly Richmond Pope, who would cover things like fraud and white-collar crimes, mentioned these three factors: motive, opportunity, and rationalization. And I think when it comes to cheating, first of all, often students have motive. They absolutely need to pass this class in order to move on to their next place or transfer to their four-year school. So I need to pass the course, or maybe even I need an A, or I need an A or B. So they have a strong motive for cheating. Opportunity has to do with if the controls to detect and prevent cheating are not in place, pretty much opens the door to opportunities for students to cheat. And then after the cheating has happened, you might think, how do they live with themselves? Well, another human factor, the ability to rationalize, to, in your mind, make it okay. Rationalization can have the effect of, the ends justify the means, or everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't I? That kind of thing comes into play. Meanwhile, you've got instructors with a variety of attitudes towards student cheating. So here's a couple of things that I've heard from other instructors, perhaps while I was taking ION courses, and this might have been an ION discussion question topic. So I hear this one a lot. If they cheat, they're only cheating themselves. Well, that may be true from a standpoint of you're cheating yourself out of the process of learning, but let's face it, on the other hand, even though we try to build a community of students, there's still a competitive factor there. Essentially, students are in competition with each other. And essentially, if they cheat, they are taking unfair advantage, not playing on a level playing field. And this could actually result in a student who cheats getting that interview that the student who did things the right way, but perhaps got a lower grade, and doesn't get the interview, and that just plain old doesn't seem fair. As for the second quote here, part of certain cultures, I think the less I say about this, the better, except that if you are inferring that it's okay for some to cheat, I strongly disagree with that, quite frankly. All right, so pressing on. Let's start talking about some of the obvious here. Yes, Captain Obvious is making an appearance with us today. So if we are having the in-class cheating type of situation, for example, when we're giving a test in class, and I realize that that does seem to be becoming an endangered species now as the moving over to ERL and a lot more online, we have a lot less in-class tests that students are taking, but some are still doing that. If that's the case, I do look forward to the day when we can be in full packed classrooms, even if that means students are sitting right next to each other. But during tests or exams, yeah, the old alternate test approach works on this one. I've tried this and it really does work. You get the orange copy, you get the white copy, whatever paper colors we have handy. And you don't have to have them as completely different tests, but just enough changes and switching things around that it would not be helpful to be looking over at your neighbor's test, doing it this way. Yeah, walking around, I see a lot of instructors who just sort of keep sitting in the front of a room doing some other work while tests are going on. And could a student be taking a quick look at their phone during the test? Yeah, they could be. What I do sometimes is make up an excuse. I'll crumple up a piece of paper every now and then and have to walk over to the garbage can and just take a quick glance. You don't want to be creepy about it and be looking over everybody's shoulder, but you want to make sort of a subtle look and make sure the in-class test protocol is going on. And then I would recommend, and this may not be a very popular suggestion, but don't make it all Scantron. A Scantron is pretty easy to take a quick peek over and, okay, I see BDCCA here. Okay, well, I got the first 5. Don't make tests and exams all Scantron. Making that a part of it, but make tests a lot more than just Scantron as well. All right, well, that takes care of the in-class cheating on tests and exams. As for the copying the homework kind of situation, we might have to come up with some other ideas for that coming up. All right, but moving over to the world of online cheating here, or the cheating that may be considered as cheating online. What instructors should do is really communicate what the definition and their definition of cheating is and what isn't, blocked out there, isn't acceptable. And this should probably be on the syllabus as well. We do have a syllabus section about academic integrity, so we should define that. So for example, if a student is asking, and sometimes I get asked by a student, because here's where the reality check comes in here. Online students ask me, well, is the test open book? And if we're not going the route of proctoring, spy cam, I pretty much just say it's an online test. But to actually tell an online student, no, I expect you not to use any books or any other resources at all when we're taking a test online, frankly, let's face it, that is not realistic. Students will be, to at least some extent, trying to use some resources when they're taking a test online. There's just no doubt about that. But while we're taking these online tests, we want to set our suspicion meter onto high. That word is high. That's blocked out there by our very suspicion meter. We want to be alert for, and this is something to really be on guard for, the inconsistencies between the different forms of assessment. Perhaps you've experienced this, where the students are taking online tests or quizzes or even homework, and you're finding, wow, those scores are great. They're getting 100% on all of them. They're doing well. But then you post a discussion question to a new forum, and you see what they're contributing to the discussion question, and it's complete nonsense. It doesn't make any sense at all. It appears that the students are not familiar with the course content at all based on what they're posting to the discussion questions. Yet, somehow, they did extremely well on the tests and the quizzes. That simply means that that suspicion meter is saying something is off here. And then watch out for words and phrases or other types of input. And this could be taking place in projects, for example, that seem just out of place or just plain old familiar, perhaps too familiar. For example, now I got this one on a deliberately small font here because this is what I, as the instructor, was looking at here. But in this case, this phrase here that we call commissions is based on 1% of sales turnover. And I did the wait, what are we saying here? It made no sense. The project, which was a budget project, had to do with commissions, and they were clearly, with a little calculation, 20% of sales, not 1% of sales turnover. And as a fact, sales turnover was not an expression that we used at any time in the course. And I actually went back and checked the book. It's not even in the book. So sales turnover was essentially completely inappropriate for this particular project. So that phrase kind of stuck with me, and I did some digging into past projects. And from the previous term, 3 of the projects had this very same sentence in there. Commissions is based on 1% of sales turnover. And in the term before that, 7 of the projects had this expression. Commissions is based on 1% of sales turnover. One of those projects, when I took a closer look, one of those 7 was submitted using a shared Google Docs format. So, well, at least I felt somewhat proud, I guess, because this project is out there in cyberspace now. Check it out. However, there was clearly a case of not original work going on in this particular project. So one thing to keep in mind, what I would suggest is, if you're assigning projects in your online classes or even in your ERL, update them from time to time. Because even if they got it right, if the sales commissions was 20%, how about in the next term making it 25% or 10%? Do enough changing of your projects, and perhaps you might even consider updating it into new concepts such as COVID or whatever happens to be what's going on, but make them so anything that might be online and available from a previous term would not be relevant to this particular project, this particular term. Next up, I want to call your attention to publisher test banks. Sure, many of us like them. We're trying to put a test together, and I've actually seen publishers come in and present how we can use their test banks. And, it saves a lot of work for those of us who don't particularly like preparing or creating test questions. But the trouble with publisher test banks, and for that matter, quiz banks and homework assignment, exercise, or problem banks is a lot of the solutions to this information and these items is available online. For example, let's take a look at this question from our publisher in the world of managerial accounting. Job order costing system. This is a type of question that a well-prepared student would be able to knock out in about 30 seconds or so. Yeah, the official answer is shown on here when I'm using this from the publisher test bank format. And so I go and consider this one of our test questions for an upcoming test. And hopefully the student, once they open this up, can produce the correct answer. Or maybe they go online and they Google, well, Darden Corporation uses job order costing. And you may notice I even misspelled the name of the company. It's not Darden, it's Dearden. Doesn't matter, it popped up here. Dearden Corporation uses job order costing system. Dearden Corporation uses job order costing system. And this is just a couple of the hits. There were actually many more. Click on these and you are likely to find this particular question and the correct answer. And it goes even deeper than just test banks that are available for the taking online. Even in the area of assignments from publisher content. In financial accounting, one of our assignments is to complete problem 4-5A. It's a pretty comprehensive problem that would take even the prepared student a good several hours to get through all the steps needed to produce all of the deliverables that are part of this particular problem. Or let's just go online, Google Financial Accounting, Warren 15th edition, problem, there it is, problem 4-5A. That was the one in question here. And what comes up? All sorts of Q&A, problem 4-5A, problem 4-5A, problem 4-5A. Many opportunities to get the complete solution to all of these. And yes, I've had students, this goes into the suspicion meter again. Students that have been struggling, students that haven't been doing that well on quizzes or in-class tests, but they just sail right through this type of problem, except for maybe that one who not only copied all the answers in order, but copied copyright 2019 at the very bottom of the page. Got a little too carried away there. So this is something to be aware of. Even the textbook publisher homework problems, exercises are available for the student. They can find them. Sometimes it really just takes something as simple as a quick Google search. All right, so that puts us at a rather frustrating level here. What can we do? Well, a couple of things worth considering then, and I'll say considering, this could be a whole nother session in itself, but consider what's available in the area of the online plagiarism and or proctoring tools. As for the plagiarism, I have not used Safe Assign on Blackboard, to be honest, but it appears to be set up well, offers a matching view that would let the instructor consider, in terms of a matching percent, what could and maybe could not be acceptable. I have used something called Turnitin, and I have to admit, it's pretty eye-opening. Couple of buttons you click and it gives you the similarity index, and I found a student that submitted a paper that was pretty much the same as a paper turned into some school in New Hampshire several years previous. So it does provide some very interesting type of things if you are the kind of instructor that gives papers to do that are pretty much based on a variety of content. Now, in accounting, the projects that I often assign are based on some specifics that, of course, involve numbers. So the plagiarism issue really isn't as much on the words as it is on the numbers, like we saw before with that 10% sales commission thing. Talking about online tests, proctoring tools for online tests. I would say the jury is still out in this area. I have tried Examity for a couple of online tests a couple of terms ago, and I was willing to be the canary in the coal mine on that one, and frankly, it crashed and burned. The issues may have been some sort of password protection, maybe just plain old user error on my part. But what happened the 2 times I tried it is almost all students were unable to open their test, and I had to spend a very late evening scrambling to put another test onto Blackboard. And just when I thought all was lost, one student then reported she did actually get in and took the test online, but she also reported that she was rudely treated by somebody watching her take a test. So again, there's some issues there maybe to work out. I know our publisher McGraw-Hill has an online proctoring tool as well, and some of my early research on that has shown that it is perhaps a little inconclusive at best. I believe the first time through, everyone had a 50% suspect kind of rating, including one person who's joined us here today. I won't name names, but I happen to know that person would not consider and not have any suspicion whatsoever. So welcome to still try those proctoring tools. And again, it depends on your comfort level. I don't feel so great about spying on students, and it might creep them out. And let's face it, most of us doing the remote learning, most students are not even sharing their cameras with us during the class. So to try to get them to share their cameras while they're taking a test could be another hurdle that we would have to overcome. So what else can we do? All right, let's say we're still on the fence about proctoring and maybe not ready to try that yet. So a couple of other suggestions here. Limit the use of those publisher test bank questions, as already mentioned. We could find those. Come up with some of your own and throw those into the mix. Then, of course, we know we have the ability to scramble the questions, so students maybe trying to take tests together are going to have a hard time with that. Use algorithmic when there's sometimes different numbers for different questions. That has some mitigating effect. And set time limits that are stringent enough that would not allow for a massive amount of research on each and every question. And then finally, in terms of, again, including some of your own questions, which I believe I just mentioned, but I have data for that. For those that are saying, where's the data in this? Everything's anecdotal so far. All right, this is true data here. On a recent exam, I combined some publisher questions and some of my own questions, and this is the way it shook out. 16%, this is a total composite here, 16% of the publisher questions were answered incorrectly, and 40% of my questions were answered incorrectly. And I assure you, most of my questions would generally be considered easy for the prepared student. So this is actually, frankly, some pretty disturbing and pretty implausible, unless something is going on, data here. So worth considering. One other recommendation that I have tried, and it has gone pretty well, actually, and that is when I assign projects or even tests or exam portions to take online, individualize it. What I mean by individualize is, and again, it's accounting, so lends itself for doing this. So different students over here on the left-hand side have different, this is a project for a capital budgeting project. they had different investment amounts and different rates of return. So the answers that would have been part of their project should have been different. So I found that worked pretty well after seeing all of those repeated 7 and then 3 and then 1 more project from previous terms. Now, the only downside to this, students didn't necessarily all catch that they had individual portions of this. And I don't know, students tend to do this. When in doubt, you see a bunch of numbers, add them all up. And that's what some students did here. They added up all these numbers and things didn't really go the way they were supposed to there. So let's move over to the right side of things. This was related to a test that I created, but I individualized the test question and I got a little more in your face this time. In other words, Brandon, your cash balance is 26, your sales balance is 78. That's what you're supposed to use, Brandon. Don't use Justina's and don't use Alexis's. Use yours. That worked out better, it appeared. Everybody did manage to use their own numbers. Now you might be saying, well, doesn't that take a lot longer to grade projects and grade tests when students have individual numbers? Well, yes, it does take, I'd say, somewhat longer, but not as much as you originally think. When you grade tests, you of course get a rhythm going, and it takes, I would say, a little extra time, but frankly, I think it's worth it when at the end you want to submit the appropriate grades for every student. You want to submit what they truly earned. So that essentially brings me to our wrap up here with trying to keep within the time constraints here. It's all about integrity. It is part of our values at Triton. So I think we want to make sure that academic integrity is still with us. And I don't want to use enforced, but still part of the way we deal with ourselves and deal with students here at Triton. So it appears I might have a couple of minutes to go. And are there any questions that I could at least give an attempted answer to? Any thoughts, comments? Is it Deanna?
Yeah, Deanna, thank you. I just actually need some advice from the group here. You had said earlier that the teacher should define what they think cheating is and then communicate that. I have two instances of things that occur regularly, and I need to know if I am correctly calling them cheating. But what are your thoughts on the students copying and pasting test questions? You know, they're up so they can see them, and then they copy and paste them to their own document to be studied and whatever they do with them later. And the second thing is, if I tell them that the test starts at 9 a.m. and they don't sign on until 9:30, giving them that half hour to talk to friends that are on the test, I might be just being too hard, but it could be happening, to allow them then to look at the book prior to them finally signing on. Do you think those two things are considered cheating?
Well, I've probably talked enough here today, and I want to keep it sort of a forum. So does anyone have any response to Deanna here? The question is the copying and the pasting of test questions and those that conveniently start tests significantly late.
Hey, Geoff, this Calvin. The second question, I probably would say, long as they have the duration period to complete that test. For example, if it's an hour and they come in 30 minutes later, well, they only got 30 minutes to complete that exam. Because it's similar to, face-to-face. If I'm in your classroom and the class starts at 9:30 and I come in at 9:45, as long as I have the same amount of time everybody else had to complete the exam, I think it's okay. Because now you kind of pulling the strings and going a little deep when you're trying to figure out what's a person doing for getting to a class a little later. Now, if you're going to extend the time period, yeah, I think that'd be a problem then. But if you have 30 hours to do the exam, if you go in and you do it on, you get there at 9:30, you have 10:30. I get there at 9:50 at 10:30. I think it'll be okay on the second question.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. And yes, for what it's worth, I agree with you. If student starts the test late, then they would have had an hour and 15 minutes. Now you got 45 minutes. But I also That's one of those situations where my suspicion meter starts cranking up a little bit. And I will be especially interested in seeing if that student result may have been somewhat inconsistent with previous forms of assessment. As for the copying and pasting, again, we know it happens. And this is just another example of why I try to switch things up and change questions from term to term, because I go under the assumption that every question given online is now out there and available for somebody to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, Geoff, it's Gretchen. You know what I was gonna say too, that Deanna, I was thinking too, is that you could, I mean, pain, but like what I have in my class, I have 2 tests for every single test that I give, so that students that, you know, need that extension or need, you know, that come in late or whatever, if it's, you know, an online exam that I'm giving and not a paper exam, then I will say, okay, well, you know what, I need to give you a different exam than everybody else is currently taking. And then I'll just do an extension to that person through my publisher stuff. So
yeah, I did make accommodations for that. I do have a test bank that I created from, you know, various sources, because I agree, I learned my lesson with the test bank from the book. That was a hard lesson to learn, but what I was wondering, you know, as far as defining cheating, it seems to me that if somebody signs on a half hour later, that gives them that half hour to, and I'm talking like exactly on the button, like, you know, not willy-nilly, like they just woke up late or something. I'm talking this person consistently signed on a half hour later. That told me that he was most likely calling someone saying, all right, what are the questions on the test? You know, and that person was giving it to him, and then he could look them up in that half hour. And then, because he would always do well, but I had him in a previous class and his student performance was not indicative of that same, like he should not have been getting such a good score in that class. So I you know, needed to know if I should correctly define that as cheating, because I think it is. But I had already made accommodations of saying, you know, what I did was I kicked the kid off, and then I sent him an email saying, I have a different test for you. And he was not happy, but
yeah, and I agree that what I use the term, I get up, we all have had this, we have students, well, I can't make it in for the test this day, can I take it some other time? And I always use the term, yes, I can give you a makeup test. That sort of infers that you ain't getting the same test that everybody else took. And you can just sort of see the wind go out of their sails when I say that. But that's the kind of thing we do have to sort of be aware of. I agree.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think I've sort of used up my time and a few extra minutes on that today.
Yeah, Geoff, we have some hands up though, real quick. Samara.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't want to see that. Samira.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Thank you so much. Actually, I had student, you know, and sometimes he take the exam and another person take exam to him. You know, I did see when I did look at the exam, it looks like 2 persons taking same exam. One of them, he didn't do very well. Another one, he did very well. But I did talk to the student, show him what is going on. He got laugh and he said, I am sorry. I told him, okay, I'm gonna, you know, forgive you and I'm gonna give you another exam. This is technology, you know, no exam is, you can't say it's safe, you know. This is my point. I cannot believe, you know, I see in same times 2 people, same code, take same exam. You know, it looks like somebody else was outside of class, take exam for him. You know, I don't know what this is.
Well, it's just another example of you got to have that suspicion meter on high, and you got to mix things up with different test algorithmic and the individualizing of the questions. Those are all kind of things that it won't solve all of these issues, but it could certainly at least mitigate them.
Actually, paper exam computer can generate many type of a question. I'm gonna do it A, B, C, D. You know, the people, the first column A, the second column B, the third column. This is little bit it's help. You know, special for multiple choice question. You know, like you could say cont'd exam. You know, it is help. Thank you. It was very nice. You know, lecture. I got advantage of it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being here. And I know it's not the most pleasant topic to deal with, but it's probably something that does have to be addressed from time to time. Okay, Nancy,
It was
something?
very good.
Yeah, I just wanted
Okay.
to add to Deanna's second question that sometimes if it's in an online test, I like to use pool questions. So that way not all the students get the same exact question. So when they take the test, even if they try to share it, they may not necessarily get the exact same question. That
Okay.
helps. I think that helps me in my classes.
You're talking
Yeah.
about like it would be the same content but just written in a different way? Or are you talking
Yes
about
and
scrambling?
no. So,
I-
for example, for let's say an anatomy question that I might use in my class, instead of pointing to like the distal part of the arm, I can point to the proximal part, and so you can create question number one with both of those actual questions for two different people.
Okay.
I think it's under question pools when you create tests, so they don't necessarily get the same questions. They could, but it could vary.
No, I like asking the questions because I try to make sure that my students understand that they're learning the concept and not the definition, necessarily of things. So I keep telling them I'm teaching you this whole concept so that no matter what question I ask you, you should be able to understand it and answer it. And so I agree. I appreciate that because I actually do have like 3 or 4 different ways that I kind of ask the same thing, or I get, like you say, if you're talking about body parts or something, this time I'm going to refer to this, and that next time I'll refer to that, so that, it's the concept of whatever it is that I'm talking about. So I found that to be very helpful.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate the interaction here, and I know we could probably continue this conversation for many more times, and maybe someday we will, but I wanted to try to make sure I stuck within our time frame here. So I will say thank you again, everybody, for joining today, and have fun shoveling if that's the case, and look forward to seeing you sometime down the road. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Geoff. Good job.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.